A man clearing out his late father's dresser found a plain gold-cased watch with a name on the dial he'd never heard of, decided it was a dated old dress watch nobody would want, and sold it with a box of costume jewelry for $50. The buyer didn't blink. That watch was a vintage Universal Genève, a maker collectors describe as a Patek Philippe that didn't survive the marketing era. Same quality, different story, and its references jumped 15 to 25% at auction the moment Breitling bought the brand in 2023. The family never knew. That's not a coincidence. The watch didn't become valuable the day it left the dresser. It was always valuable. The value was lost the moment it passed from someone who didn't know what they held to someone who did, and that gap is where almost all the money in the vintage Swiss watch world lives. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Everyone knows 3 Swiss names, and those 3 names get all the attention, all the auction headlines, and all the wait lists. Meanwhile, the watches quietly appreciating fastest are the ones with names the public doesn't recognize at all, made by companies that built movements just as fine, sometimes finer, but died in the quartz crisis, or got swallowed by a conglomerate and never had a marketing department to make you care. To you, an old Swiss watch with an unfamiliar name looks like a worthless dress watch. To a collector, it's a maker, a caliber, an era, a dial, a set of details that decide whether you're holding a $50 cast-off or a 5-figure grail. The real question isn't whether old Swiss watches are worth money. It's why the valuable ones stay so cheap in the owner's hands, and who benefits from the fact that you can't tell them apart by looking. The answer is the same for both. Knowledge here sits in very few hands. It's rarely volunteered, and a whole resale economy runs on that imbalance, especially right now. While secondary Swiss names go through a sharp revaluation the public hasn't caught up to. So here are 10 old Swiss watches, by name, that ordinary people own without knowing it. One warning first, and it matters more than anything else. Do not polish it. Do not refinish the dial. Do not have it restored to look new. Unrestored dials, even with honest wear, command more than refinished ones, and an original unpolished case with matching numbers is the single strongest thing you can hand a collector. Clean it up, and you erase the premium. The first is the Longines chronograph, and Longines is the name that fools everyone, because you've seen it in department stores and assumed it's mid-tier. In its golden era, it was anything but. Founded in 1832, Longines built its reputation on precision timing for aviation and exploration. Charles Lindbergh wore one on his solo Atlantic crossing. Albert Einstein favored a simple Longines with a silvered dial, and Howard Hughes was a lifelong devotee. The reference to know is the 13ZN chronograph, produced from 1936 to 1947, which carried the world's first flyback mechanism, and clean examples can often be found from $4,000 to $10,000, a fraction of what a comparable famous name chronograph brings. 2 Longines can look nearly identical on the wrist, while one is a common dress piece and the other is a 13ZN. Flip it over, read the caliber and the reference, and leave it exactly as it is. The next one carries a name most people have genuinely never heard, and that's the entire point. The second is the Universal Genève, the brand collectors call the Great Lost Manufacture. Eric Clapton is such a devotee that 2 references are nicknamed for him. The Tri-Compax Clapton, with its black and white panda dial, and the black-dialed Evil Clapton, because in 1966, paparazzi caught him meeting Jimi Hendrix, wearing a reference 881101. The Tri-Compax, a full calendar chronograph with moon phase, is a complication set that would cost a fortune from a famous house. And the Aero Compax was used by U.S. Navy pilots in the Second World War, with original military provenance examples commanding 5-figure sums while non-military examples remain accessible, a window that will not stay open. Here's the structural fact that matters most. Breitling acquired Universal Genève in 2023, and Vintage References immediately traded up 15 to 25% at auction, and we're still early in that re-rating. The seller sees an unfamiliar name and prices it like junk. The buyer knows exactly what a Tricompax is and pays without negotiating. If that surprised you, the next is where the movement itself is the fortune. The third is the Zenith El Primero, and the story behind it is one of the great survival tales in watchmaking. In 1969, Zenith built the El Primero, one of the first automatic chronograph movements ever made, beating at 36,000 vibrations per hour, high enough to measure a tenth of a second. Then the quartz crisis hit. Management ordered the mechanical tooling destroyed, and a Zenith watchmaker named Charles Vermont defied them and hid the tooling in the factory attic rather than let it die. The movement survived because one man refused. Today, clean examples of the original caliber 400 and the rarer manual wind 420 climb steadily at auction, and the A386 with its tricolor subdials is the icon. References housing the El Primero in original unpolished cases remain undervalued relative to comparable famous brand chronographs, and that gap is closing. Don't judge the watch by the name on the dial. Judge it by what's ticking behind it. Now the list shifts to the makers that vanished entirely, where the sleeper money lives. The fourth is the defunct brand Tool Watch, the pieces from companies that made exceptional watches and then simply died. Enicar, founded in La Chaux-de-Fonds in 1914 by Aristide Racine, whose surname spelled backward is the brand name, produced its own in-house movements after the war, earned Neuchâtel Observatory Chronometer certification in 1954, and supplied its Sea Pearl 600 diver to Swiss mountaineers who wore it in brutal Himalayan cold. Nevada Grenchen built the Chronomaster with a Valjoux column wheel chronograph movement, and the Depthmaster, rated to 1,000 meters back in 1965, and the Depthomatic, considered the first dive watch with a depth gauge. These are genuinely important watches from genuinely dead companies, which is exactly why they stay cheap, because there's no marketing department left to remind anyone they existed. The public doesn't know the name, so it doesn't know to look it up, and the information gap does the rest. The fifth lesson is the one that costs people the most without realizing it, and it's about matching numbers and what came with the watch. On a vintage Swiss watch, if the case, movement, and caseback numbers all match, it's worth a meaningful premium because mismatched numbers suggest replacement parts, and every serious buyer checks. Add the original box, the papers, the warranty card, the original bracelet with the correct signed clasp, and the service records, and you have what collectors call a full set. Here's the cruel mechanics. The watch goes in a drawer to be kept. The box gets thrown out during a move because it's just a box. The papers get tossed as clutter. The original bracelet gets swapped for a comfortable strap, and the real one vanishes. And years later, the most value-additive things you could have kept are gone, because the people who buy bare watches from people who didn't know to keep the rest are doing just fine with that arrangement. In a market crawling with married parts and refinished dials, box, papers, and matching numbers are evidence, and evidence removes risk for the buyer, which is exactly what they pay extra for. So keep everything, and do not sell a Swiss watch with its accessories in a bulk lot of old watches, because the value of a whole pile can sit in one watch and one original bracelet nobody bothered to separate. The sixth takes that bulk lot danger to its most expensive extreme, and it's the watch hiding inside the pile that's worth more than the entire pile. The Jaeger-LeCoultre is the maker collectors call the watchmaker's watchmaker, the house that supplied bare movements to Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Vacheron Constantin for most of the 20th century, developing over 1,000 calibers and holding hundreds of patents. It sits at Holy Trinity prestige, with prices that still haven't caught up to that reputation. The Memovox, the first automatic alarm wristwatch, is the sleeper, and the Memovox Speedbeat, with its high-frequency caliber 916, is one of the most technically interesting vintage finds available under $4,000. In the American market, many were signed LeCoultre, rather than Jaeger-LeCoultre, and that unfamiliar signature is exactly why families dismiss them. The danger is that a plain-looking JLC gets swept into an estate clear-out where a dealer offers a single round number for all the old watches in the drawer. The JLC gets absorbed into the lot. The family sees a fair-sounding total and takes it, relieved to be done, and the buyer walks out, having paid a fraction of one watch's value for everything. This is where the most people lose the most money, not because the watch was disguised as junk, but because it was disguised inside a fast transaction designed to prevent itemization. Grief and exhaustion are the picker's best friends, so the rule, plainly: never sell watches in a bulk lot. Never accept one price for all of them. Photograph every watch, front and back, read every caliber, and research each one separately, because the entire value of a collection can sit in one piece you didn't recognize. The seventh is the watch, where value comes not from the maker at all, but from what it did and who carried it. The military-issued Swiss watch, an IWC Mark 11 issued to the RAF, a Universal Genève Aero Compax worn by a Navy pilot, a field watch stamped with issue codes, carries markings on the caseback that look like meaningless scratches to anyone who doesn't read them. To the family, it's grandfather's beat-up old service watch. To a collector, those marks are the entire story because they prove provenance, and provenance is one of the strongest value multipliers in the market. Original examples with military provenance command five-figure sums, where the identical civilian version brings a fraction. The marks are not damaged to be cleaned away. They are the watch's identity papers, etched into the steel. And this is where I repeat the warning at its most emphatic, because issued watches are where well-meaning owners do the most catastrophic damage. They see a scratched, marked-up caseback, decide the watch should look respectable, have it polished and the back buffed smooth, and in doing so, erase the exact engravings that constitute most of the value. Evidence cleaned away is value destroyed forever, so those confusing marks on the back are not the problem. They are the prize. Leave it exactly as the soldier left it. We've covered makers, movements, matching numbers, the bulk lot, and provenance, and the last three pull all of it together, starting with the detail that separates a treasure from a common piece. The eighth is the caliber and the dial, the place where two near-identical Swiss watches sell for wildly different sums, based on something invisible to the untrained eye. Caliber significance is a real value driver. A Valjoux 22, a Lemania 1873, an El Primero 400, or a Jaeger-LeCoultre 916, inside a modest, plain case, still carries enormous weight, because these movements have stories, and in the watch world, a great story is a value driver. Then there's the dial, where unrestored beats refinished every single time, and honest wear, a faded or tropical dial, aged tritium lume gone creamy, is the proof of originality collectors pay a premium for, while the untrained owner sees only damage and wants it fixed. Two watches, same case, same name, and the one with the honest, ugly, original dial and the historically significant caliber inside is worth multiples of its pristine, refinished, common movement twin. So when you research, do not look at active listings, the watches for sale with hopeful asking prices, because anyone can ask any number, and those are fiction. Look at sold listings, What watches actually changed hands for and match the exact reference, caliber, and dial. Active listings tell you what sellers wish. Sold listings tell you the truth. The ninth is the brand that died or got bought. And in Swiss watchmaking, this isn't a metaphor. It's the defining event of the industry, the quartz crisis of the 1970s and 1980s that killed dozens of great houses outright. Inocar went insolvent, and its name was sold to a Hong Kong company. Universal Genève faded and was bought by Breitling in 2023. Others simply vanished. This is the name-stayed, factory-changed story at industrial scale, and it cuts in two directions. A familiar name on a late, cheapened, post-acquisition watch can be nearly worthless, while an unfamiliar name from a dead maker's golden years can be the prize. The genuine article is the watch made by the original Swiss manufacturer in its peak era, before the crisis, before the sale. The name on the dial is not a reliable guide anymore. You judge by the maker in its real era, the caliber, the originality, and whether everything agrees, the things the people who know read fluently, while everyone else reads only the logo. The 10th is the Grail, the watch where every principle compounds at once, and the ceiling climbs out of sight, the most extreme version of the central truth, that the value was lost the moment it passed from someone who knew to someone who didn't. At the very top sit the watches that don't look like much, a Universal Genève Tri-Compax or a military Aero Compax with documented provenance, a Longines 13ZN flyback in an unpolished case, an original El Primero A386 with its tricolor dial, a Jaeger-LeCoultre with a caliber that famous houses were happy to buy from them, and the complicated pieces, the perpetual calendars, the chronographs, the alarm complications that a normal person looks at and assumes are broken because they can't figure out how to set them. Auction data from the great houses confirms where the strongest appreciation of the past decade has actually concentrated, and it isn't only the obvious names. It's in Universal Genève's pilot and medical complications, Zenith El Primero references, and the pre-acquisition sport chronographs. These surface in ordinary drawers because their significance is invisible to the untrained eye. Every lesson converges here. Originality of the dial and case, matching numbers, the caliber inside, the box and papers, the provenance, the warning never to polish or refinish, and the venue, because where you sell matters as much as what you sell. A rare vintage Swiss watch, sold to a pawn shop, or a general jeweler, or a bulk estate buyer, is sold to whoever walks by, while the person who will actually recognize and pay for it is a specialist dealer or an auction house that knows the calibers and the dead makers cold. So here's the checklist that flips you from the person being collected from to the person who knows. Don't polish it, don't refinish the dial, don't swap the bracelet. Leave every honest mark and faded patch where it is. Flip it over and read the caseback, the caliber, and the serials, and check whether the numbers match, because the name on the front is only the beginning, and the numbers inside are the truth. Keep everything, the box, the papers, the original bracelet, the receipts. Never sell in a bulk lot. Itemize and research each piece on sold listings, not active ones. And when you've found something real, take it to a specialist, not a passerby. If you recognized even one of these names, hit the like button and comment below if you've got an old Swiss watch with a name you don't recognize, because those are exactly the ones worth checking, and I'd be happy to take a look. Subscribe if you want the part of the market the resellers already know and won't share. Because the truth, under all 10, is simple. These watches were never worthless. They were built to look like the ones people throw away, and the only thing standing between you and what they're really worth is knowing. That's not a coincidence either.